Good evening and welcome to the Drive at 5 on IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart radio station. Happy MLK Day. I'm your host, Roman, and we have a good show planned for you today. But first, the forecast from our IntellectualRadio.com Weather Center. Today, cloudy with a bit of rain, high 39 degrees tonight. Occasional rain and drizzle this evening, followed by a couple of soakers here and there. Late low 37 degrees. Tomorrow, a little rain early in the morning, considerable cloudiness, high 44 degrees. Tomorrow night, mostly cloudy, low 33 degrees. The rest of the week forecast looks like this. Periods of clouds and sun, high 43 degrees. Thursday, cloudy and milder, high 49 degrees. And on Friday, mostly cloudy, a little rain, high 46 degrees. But don't be sad, my man, because Saturday, sunny and 56 degrees. The Drive at 5 is also part of the Monday Night Mogul with the Spiritual Hour at 4 p.m. Straight No Chaser with Rhea Ray Harris at 6 p.m. Monday Night Mingle with your girl Gina at 7 p.m. May Says with Maze Jackson at 8 p.m. The Drive at 5 is also part of the fabulous 5 at 5 on IntellectualRadio.com. Today, my guest is a community leader in the African American community here in Chicago. Please welcome Willie Preston. Welcome back to the Drive.
Hey, thank you for having me, Roman, and I want to thank all the listening audience as well.
Oh, the 1 and 2 really thanks you. I'm just joking.
I'm sure you are.
Now let's get down to business here, because Chicago is all over the place, especially in the news, politics, so forth and so on. My first question to you, according to the Chicago Tribune, as of, I think, 3 o'clock p.m., Chicagoland.com states 21 homicides in counting this year. My question is, what's going on in Chicago and how we're going to curb the crime problem?
Sure. What's happening in Chicago is the same thing that's happening in the southern Philippines. The same thing that's happening in all over this world, in places where you see mass poverty. So I want to be clear. Wherever you see these levels of mass poverty concentrated in a certain area, you see these levels of violence. I tell people, and some folks take it as a joke, but it's extremely serious. If you go to the southern Philippines right now, you could likely have your head cut off for a nickel. People are literally starving. So we talk so often about solving the problem of violence by taking violence head on, being tough on crime. But if we continue to take that type of approach to solving violence, focusing on violence in itself, we'll never solve the problem of violence in Chicago or anywhere else. We'll only make it worse. We have to get at the root causes of violence. Mass unemployment, no home ownership by people who live in the communities like Roseland, like Inglewood, North Lawndale. Gentrification is strangling the life out of the current population of Chicago, particularly African American and folks.
So you're saying the answer is, in order to curb the problem, you got to get to the root of the problem, which is re-gentrification, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And part of my question down the line is, we talk about re-gentrification all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Over and over, money is in the community. You have TIFs. And you have business and community leaders that don't belong, but they get the money. Because under the bylaws, it's under the discretion of the alderman and the mayor who gets the money.
Yeah. So
are you talking about to see some real change, or what are you talking about?
So let's be honest. This
is the Drive at 5. Honesty is the best policy.
This city has an antiquated governing problem. And what I mean by that is, this is no longer the days of James Medill over in the 1800s when Lincoln was president, when we gave the Chicago executive, the mayor, unprecedented powers, and kind of really neglected the philosophy of representation of the people, and not this, this one guy or one gal, one person could actually run in a city as enormous as Chicago. The mayor controls the TIF. The all the what you just stated about the alderman having some say so. They're just happy to get it when the mayor grants it, because the power of that slush fund all by himself. He doesn't need any aldermen. He can grant those TIF dollars, and that's what he does. So when you see Whole Foods and other places popping up in Inglewood, these things were creations of the mayor, and that is a problem. So we need to change that structure. But to get back to what I spoke to you a minute ago about the root causes, it's not just the city of Chicago that's responsible for the violence of Chicago, and we have to look at the state of Illinois. When we're last in investing in education in our children, you're going to see some serious problems, some serious social problems. When we don't teach civic education at all in the state of Illinois, you're going to grow. We're raising a generation of people who are completely ignorant. There are people who don't live in this country who have children who have a better understanding of our government than kids that are growing up in Inglewood, in Roseland, all over the city. And those are political decisions that were made, and they need to be changed. So we have to start thinking about the funding mechanism when it comes to how we fund education. On this day, we celebrate Dr. King. He so often spoke about equity, making things fair. We have to keep in mind that education is a right, not a privilege. And right now, our education policies not just in Chicago and not just in Illinois, all over the nation, strongly counter to that. It says that if you're rich, if you were lucky enough, your kid, you grew up, you happen to be the kid of you happen to be a child of, let's say, Bruce Rauner or Rahm Emanuel, you're going to be granted a quality education. The schools in Ravenswood and the mayor's community are terrific schools. But if you happen to be birthed to parents that are poor, let's say again in Roseland, in Inglewood, Auburn, Gresham, then you're not guaranteed that. You're in fact guaranteed the opposite. And these type of things all contribute to the conditions that we're seeing right now today. People are not credentialed. Generation after generation of folks are not credentialed to take the jobs that pay well, so that they can actually afford to have a meaningful and productive life and be proud to get up and go to work in the morning, to have the experience of the stress and excitement and all those emotions that come with buying that home, the stairs, that American dream. This is systematically denied to people inside the African American community, particularly, especially as the business community has made a conscious decision to undermine Black labor at all costs.
Well, let me stop you right there.
Sure.
Okay. A lot of people listening to IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart radio station, they would say, wow, I'm digging what you're just saying. That's peppermint rainbows out there, Sure. In reality, true. I wish it could happen, but it's not happening.
Sure. Absolutely right.
And on top of that, let's say, for example, we get this. We get the money. We get what you said with the regentrification. But the state keeps on cutting. The city keeps on cutting. What's the problem with not-for-profit organization? It's not because the community is not doing their part. They have a whole bunch of not-for-profit organizations to keep the children off the street. The problem is you build them up, then you let them down. It's kind of like a reverse of a military tactic. They tear you down first to get you where you want to, then they lift you back up because you're part of their family now. So this is a reverse tactic, meaning we're going to sell you this pipe dream, this peppermint rainbow, and then we're going to cut, slash, and dash and make you suffer.
Look,
what's your response to that?
My response is that most people in the community, if given the choice, and these are people in the poorest communities in this city that I have relationships with, people that I talk to all the time and that I am organizing. If you give those folks, the majority of those folks who are intelligent people, they don't have a lot of formal education. They don't have master theses under their belts or doctoral degrees. But these people make intelligent choices every day because every choice that they make is based on their survival. If you give these folks an opportunity, a choice to either have food stamps or subsidized housing or their own money to go into the grocery store and spend cash or debit card or their own money, their own homes, those folks would choose the latter. The problem is that it's a very fair argument to be made, and we need to have this discussion, that the social welfare state has not worked. It is a failure. So what we need not do is simply focus, like we've been doing for the last 40, 50 years, on social programs per se, but we actually have to take a stronger investment in people themselves, in businesses. That's where we need to be at right now. And right now we're so far apart because our political leaders have made a conscious decision to have a duel, if you will, and I'm speaking at the state level again, between Speaker Madigan and we lack leadership on both sides of the aisle, rank and file state representative, rank and file state senators, who I don't care who you are at this point in the state, white district, Latino district, African American districts. People are suffering because folks lack the leadership to say, you know what, this is wrong. We need to pass a budget.
What kind of leadership you want in Springfield?
Sure.
Describe that, because every single election around Christmas time, you see Representative such and such with a turkey,
sure,
a ham, gone to the senior center.
Mm-hmm.
They vote for the same individual all the time. One thing that people agree with Runner is term limits, which you also agreed.
I do.
However, it's not happening. Michael Madigan, no.
It's not just Michael Madigan. It's Republicans as well, especially the rank and file, especially the high-ranking Republicans. This is not, and that's to answer your question.
But who's to blame then? Because you're saying both to blame. So the root of the problem is people are suffering. As you said on my show last year, nothing gets passed by the Black Caucus. Nothing's passed because the Black Caucus is the majority. Why are we in a stalemate?
The question is, why are we in a stalemate as it relates to the Black Caucus? I want to make sure. Can you ask that question? I want to make sure that we're clear.
What I'm saying is, last year,
mm-hmm.
you were on our show,
mm-hmm.
and you said nothing gets passed in Springfield unless the Black Caucus supports it. And I'm saying to you, the Black Caucus is still the majority down there. Why we're still in a stalemate?
The Black Caucus has no political agenda.
Meaning?
They have no. If you asked a political agenda from a caucus group should be very straightforward. If you ask one caucus member, what's your priority during this term limit, they should be able to say A, B, C. If you asked another caucus member, same thing, A, B, C. But we don't have that. So what we need is a leadership to say, this term we want to make certain that we raise. We want to reduce the unemployment rate of African Americans who are the predominant people inside my district by X amount. We look at unemployment rates that are higher than times of Jim Crow inside of Chicago right now. But if you asked and people should understand the political priorities of the Black Caucus, but they don't. You can't understand something that doesn't exist. So the type of leadership that I think the better question is, what type of leadership do we need? The type of leadership that
I asked that earlier.
Well, the type of leadership that we need is leadership that is very clear, very direct and very radical right now. And what I mean by that is,
But you can't get too radical. Michael
why
Madigan,
not?
you're ruffling too many feathers, Michael Madigan would say. You
Sure,
got to stay in your place in Springfield. That's what was told.
sure. And staying in your place in Springfield has black districts all across the state of Illinois not only staying in their place, but losing their place in terms of income level, in terms of home ownership, in terms of business ownership. And so we have to ruffle feathers. We have to, our lawmakers in particular have a moral obligation to ruffle feathers, because what the status quo isn't working for the people inside of their districts. It's actually counter to their own interests, I would argue, because the further that they continue to stay in their place, the more we're going to see this mass exodus of black people who just make the intelligent decision that they can no longer survive in the city of Chicago and in the state of Illinois. What's interesting to me, Roman, is that so many people, friends, cousins, people that I don't know, black folks who are leaving the state are actually going to Republican states. Why? Because they can find a job, because they can find some housing, and because they have less fear of being shot and killed every day. That is a travesty. So we have to sit down and rethink what we're doing. We're not very intentional anymore in terms of building independent political organizations like we were in the day of Harold Washington. That is a problem. I don't think all black lawmakers are just, as some of my astute associates would like to call them, just Toms or Uncle Toms
or graham crackers.
or graham crackers. What I think it is that they too are making decisions, but it's based on their own political survival, as opposed to the survival of the people that they represent. You see, they don't have independent political organizations. So this whole talk about, they with the machine. Let me be clear, and I'm not crazy, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, but this statement is actually a fact. There is no Democratic machine in the Cook County. There's none. What there is at this point, there once was, but what there is in Cook County is a very well-funded corporate Democratic Party. These people, when the Democratic machine had a machine, that means they had precinct captains. Precinct captains had people that they control, whether it was 20, whether it was 50, whether it was 100. And all of these people got together and they worked. They knocked doors by the thousands sometimes. They actually knew everybody in their community. They controlled the businesses in their communities. Everybody was a part of it. Everybody had a role. It was a real, well-oiled machine. But again, right now, the Democrats can holler all they want, but they've taken round of money before in the past, truth be told, because it's two elections that are taking place. It's the money election that takes place before any other election takes place. So if Roman wants to run for office against me, against Willie Preston, and you got all the great ideas in the world, all the integrity, all of the strength, and all of the heart for the job, you lose that race 9 times out of 10. And this is indicative all over the country because the role money plays in politics. You lose that race in a race with me, even if I care nothing for the same people that we both vying to represent. If I win the first race being the election race that has all the fundings, where they get to choose who they want, all of the special interest groups. So they can cut the $4,999 checks. They can cut those checks to the people that they say are going to be amenable to their interest, even if it hurts the interest of the people that they want to represent. Here's why. Because while you running around door knocking, trying to get your cousins to help you out and your neighbors who believe in you, who know Roman's a real, genuine guy, he's serious, I have people who I can pick up at the drop of a dime and pay them $10 an hour for the next 8 weeks to go knock on every door and tell every lie about you that I can dream of. I got money for mailers, and people know me because of because I have the money to get myself known. I can throw parties to my seniors. I can pay off the people who manage the senior buildings to let me inside the building to make certain that they keep you out when you want to come and talk to the same seniors. So by the time election comes, I've already run the race, not because I've done anything. I may not even know half what's going on in the election because all I've done was just accept the money from folks, and a lot of times not even had a decision in my own campaign. That's what's happening in a lot of political races in this city in particular. I know this to be a fact, They don't have a clue as to what's happening in a lot of their campaigns. They're just there for the ride. And guess what? After I get sworn in and inaugurated, who do you think I'm going to be working for?
Trump.
The people who paid me the people who paid me to be there, not the people who I've never met, because it's all transactional for our politicians. It has to be something deeper than that. I have to actually know Ms. Johnson on our block. I have to know what that ridiculous property tax increase is going to do to her from an alderman. I have to know what that water tax is going to do to the local businessman who owns a laundromat in my community. I have to understand the impact that's going to have on young families that live in my community that want to go to that need the laundromat.
That's the problem right there. They don't care.
Sure.
They don't care. And it goes to the question that I'm about to ask. Rahm Emanuel.
Who was that?
Rahm Emanuel. Does he have a plan to curb the violence? Because it seems like he does not.
You're probably not used to this, but I'm gonna answer your question with a question. If you had a felon and you were responsible for a sports team, and you had 20 losing seasons, would you hire the same management for the 21st season, or would you go and get new management?
Complete overhaul.
Well, that's the same question. When I hear that question, is what I'm thinking about. He's not capable of solving any of the major issues in Chicago, because he's had failing seasons time and time again. And the sad part of it all is that he could have made the difference.
Let me stop you there, because sure. They're saying right now he can win the election. He has $4.5 million in his war chest. You just talked about money.
Sure.
4.5 in his war chest.
Sure. And Ronald has 50 million. He gives himself a gift. Does that mean he's going to be the governor again? If that's the case, if that is the case.
But it goes back to the old saying that you said not too long ago. Money talks, BS walks.
Well, maybe I should finish that, because there's the other side to that.
Okay.
The other side is having real candidates who understand campaigning and politics, and we don't have that. And there's only one thing that can come.
But I'm going to have to interrupt you again.
There's a comeback. There's a way to beat that.
You do have candidates that knows the issues. They don't get elected.
They
don't have the money.
So there is something much greater than money.
Why?
Organizing. There has to be folks on the ground and do this in real organizing strategies and know exactly who they and actually have a message for those people that's deeper than transactional. And if you if you need any more proof, then just look at the presidential campaign. Hillary Clinton outspent Donald Trump galore. And we can make all type of arguments about why she lost the election, why she won. We need to get rid of the Electoral College. We can have those type of arguments. But the contest was the contest. We all knew, it's certainly Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton knew what the contest was. It was a contest for electoral colleges. They played in that contest. Why did she lose? Well, we can continue to have that debate. The only thing I think that's important to pull from that for the purposes of this conversation is that's proof in the pudding that money is not the solution.
And I beg to differ on that, because behind the scenes, Donald Trump paid people. He used his Twitter to the masses. Free marketing, free social media. He was the king of that. Mm-hmm. In comparison to any other politicians that we're aware of, we give him that. However, when you talk to people behind the scenes, you got to give it up. He had money. Sometimes when you say you got to play by the rules, some people don't play by the rules. It goes back to this old song by the Main Ingredients that every time I get heartbroken, everybody plays the fool, no exception to the rules. and basically that's what Hillary is feeling. She played the fool, no exceptions to the rules. And that was Donald Trump. He didn't play by any rules. And that's what I'm going to pivot to Chicago. Runner is not playing by any rules. Madigan's not playing by any rules. Mayor Rahm Emanuel is not playing by any rules. And the streets are not playing by any rules. So what you have, it reminds me of the movie Purge 1, Purge 2, Purge 3. That what reminds me of.
I haven't watched any of those, so I would.
No, I'm just giving you a scenario. What's happening? You have a free for all, and once you have a free for all in a democratic society, you have all chaos.
Well, look, in chaos, one of the things that I take from Rahm Emanuel, one of the things that I take from Rahm Emanuel, never let a good chaos go on. Every chaos, there's opportunity. And right now it's opportunity for people to organize themselves for their own interests. That's exactly what folks like me are doing in the streets every day. Right now, again, we have a large shovel to lift, but we're lifting it because the truth is that many people want to do so much to better their own conditions, but they just simply lack the understanding that they already have money and tools already, but they actually need some guidance, some political education, and some organizing strategies. That's what we have to do right now in this chaos because nobody wants to walk. I don't care, even the thugs in the street. They don't want to get shot in the head. They don't want their children shot. They don't want their grandmothers shot. And that's what's happening right now. People want to be successful. You look at, I love that song that Drake made. I just want to be successful because it was so indicative of what all of us want in some capacity or another, for whether that's being a successful radio talk show host or a public servant. We all want to be successful, but in the public domain, the know-how on how to be successful. To be honest, many of our public officials lack the understanding how to be successful politically. You think the Black Caucus likes? They know their rep. You think they like that? They don't. But many of them actually lack the understanding on how to be successful. And the truth is, a lot of the members of the Black Caucus just don't really get along privately. So they don't have. That's why we don't again have a unified Black Caucus agenda. I went down to Springfield one time lobbying, not long ago actually, and I was speaking with Senator Sandoval. It was shortly after Theresa Ma, the first Asian American, had been elected to a state rep inside of his Senate district. And there were about 5 to 6 of us, and each one of us that walked in Senator Sandoval's office, he asked us where did we live. A couple of them lived in his district, and he said, "You probably voted for Theresa Ma," with some young white folks, and they said, "Yeah, we did." And his face turned. He was visibly,
shaken,
upset. He was mad. He was frank, and he asked them. He said, "What, you don't believe in Mexican empowerment?" And he started giving us this spiel about how he goes down to Springfield. He sees the Springfield as a gladiator dome, and how he's down there simply to slay the dragon. And he looked specifically at me, the only African American in the room, and he said, as he was giving his speech, "If I have to take your people food, I'll take it, bring it back to my people, because I'm down here to slay the dragon, brother." And it was at that moment, Roman, that I knew I was going to make my own run for elected office, because I recognized we didn't have gladiators. We have to have ruthless gladiators, ruthless people that are down to speak specifically for the interests of the people that they represent. And if that's something that's already inside of you. And so when we make conscious decisions on when we make decisions about who we're going to elect for office, it has to be a conscious, thoughtful decision. And right now, as you said a minute ago, we are in a state of chaos. In times of chaos, we need strong leadership. And back to what we talked about at the presidential race, I think people saw that in both candidates, both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. It was only so many people presumed that Donald Trump was somehow some type of, they miscalculated that in Donald Trump by only looking at Hillary Clinton. The same thing is true about our politicians right now in Chicago and in Springfield.
You mentioned you're currently running for office, or are you used to run for office?
No, I've never run for office before, other than the local school.
Are you announcing your candidacy?
I will announce I've made a decision to run for elected office, Roman. I won't be
So
announcing.
this is the breaking news, right?
This is breaking news.
Okay.
What I will tell you is that you know, you invite me back to this show next month, and I'll announce what office that is. But right now, I'm letting you and your listening audience know that I intend to be a gladiator in a public realm, so that I can not only simply speak about these issues. Hopefully, I'll be given an opportunity to actually perform.
You already limited the position already. You already told the story. But we'll have you back.
Be fair to my team.
Yeah, you reach out to your team. Okay, getting back. But thanks for announcing. The Department of Justice came out with their report on Friday. A lot of people are saying city officials been turning a blind eye towards police brutality for decades, and the people who was watching this basically say no fill in the blank Sherlock. We've been saying this for decades. Well, it is intellectual radio, so go ahead.
No shit, Sherlock.
But we looked at it and you saw two dynamics. One, Rahm Emanuel, the other, the head of the Department of Justice, and she looked like more of a mayoral candidate or the mayor than Rahm Emanuel. My question to you is, what was your take on that report? And number two is, what you think of the dynamics in that press conference?
I thought the report, much like most people thought about the report, and you kind of said it, it was a no shit Sherlock moment for many of us. But what was so telling is I couldn't help but think about the press conference that Mayor Emanuel held a couple months back, and he spoke about violence and his $100 million pledge to combat violence by hiring a bunch of new police officers. Again, the wrong strategy that's been tried and failed before. Trying to police your way out of violence, and it's not going to happen. The Department of Justice report underscored what so many people who believe that the solving violence is going to take addressing the root causes again. It's going to take police per se, but it's going to take an investment in business. It's going to take an investment in education. And we saw that the mayor standing there, he's ill-equipped and ill-prepared to actually take on this problem. It's very interesting that the mayor was at that press conference, considering the fact that he's oversaw these. He's been in office for what, 7 years? He's oversaw this. His police department has continued to not address some of the most clear-cut violations of the Constitution of people inside this city. The mayor's a fool. He's a smart guy. He knows that with African Americans being a third of the population, that 74% of the stops are made on Black people. Although, if you look at all of the statistical data, it shows that you're more likely to find contraband if you stop a white person than a Black person. But he didn't stand in front of his police department. And again, unprecedented powers as an executive in a city like Chicago. And he has the power of unilaterally appointing folks, of course with consent, but he can appoint these people himself. He appoints the police chief. He himself could have addressed these stop and frisk policies. You can call it whatever you want, but it's stop and frisk. We've been living with stop and frisk for so long. Before it was considered unconstitutional. The mayor could have stopped all of this.
But then again, stop and frisk is going to be back in play when Trump gets. That's one of the main things he's saying, because he's going to overturn, hopefully, with his appointment of the Supreme Court to overturn the stop and frisk.
Well, I wouldn't give him that much credit to say that he can stop these court orders unilaterally. That's one of the greatest things about our country, is that we have three branches of government that keep each other in check. So it's one thing to speak.
You're absolutely correct. But there's a however in this, and sorry to overtalk you, but there is a however, because I want to give a clear-cut example to our listening audience here. You have 52 Republicans in a House, in the Senate. They can run rings around the Democratic Party. That's why they're upset. They have backdoor closed meetings. Obamacare wiped out. As soon as he placed that hand, bye-bye.
And I can guarantee you there were plenty of Democrats that were happy about it. So.
And number two.
Privately.
Number two, there's the stop and frisk. There's Roe v. Wade. There's a lot of issues that people are concerned about, especially African Americans. Now, it pivots to my question that I have here, that Donald Trump will be sworn in as the 45th president of the United States. Donald Trump have said some demeaning things about African Americans. One recently with Senator John Lewis, and he said he will not attend the inauguration. And Trump took to Twitter again and basically said, you know, he needs to do this for his district, this blah, 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 without knowing the facts. The facts are John Lewis is very, very productive in his district. And why is he going there? And then he refused to go to the historical Black African American Museum. He declined the invitation. He declined the NAACP. And my question to you is, should African Americans be worried about a president who just don't give a fill in the blank about our issues in our community?
All politics is local. I think African Americans locally should be organized at the smallest levels possible, because all politics is local.
But you need federal funding.
Yeah, sure, you need federal funding. But if you live in a city, say like Chicago, and the president-elect is telling the mayor that he's going to deny federal funding on the grounds that the mayor is engaged in an illegal immigration policy position, and the mayor says, well, I don't want any federal funding then, because we're going to remain a sanctuary city. That's a question and a discussion that we need to have as African Americans, particularly, because again, we need to be gladiators in the public realm. And the question is then, is that going to affect our food? And I think the answer obviously is yes. So, but with respect to John Lewis, let me say this. John Lewis, I have so much admiration for a man such as John Lewis. I think unknowingly I fashioned myself to be a firebrand like him. If you ever been around at any of the rallies that I've been at, and this is just organic, it's who I am. I get aggressive, and insofar as I would describe as passion, I guess opponents of mine would describe it as aggression. And I'm very passionate about the people that I care about, the things that affects our lives every day. But the truth is that a lot of our civil rights icons, they have to figure out a way to separate themselves from their tenure as civil rights activists and politicians, because the truth is, it is unfair for any politician to consider himself abstain from criticism, whether that criticism is right or wrong, because that's the nature of politics. And it's more difficult for us who hold people like John Lewis in a very warm place in our heart. At the same time, we have to be willing to criticize our own politicians, not for the sake of criticism. Nobody wants that guy around, but for the sake of accountability. Because accountability, in my judgment, is an act of love. Because Roman, if I tell you I'm coming on your radio show, and then I counsel on you because I didn't feel like it today, you should you ask me, what's up with that, Willie? But if because you like me so much that you don't ask that, guess what your radio show would be? If you engaged in that type of behavior, how successful do you think your radio show would be? Not very successful. And in many ways, we have engaged like that, not just with Congressman Lewis, but with Representative Danny Davis, Representative Congressman Bobby Rush, people who we revere for their activism and the things that they've done. But we have to be mature people and recognize that while we love these people and cherish them forever, we also have to hold them accountable because our lives are at stake today.
You mentioning you're running for public office.
Sure. Yes.
Imagine you just won the election.
I have.
Okay. Okay. You're way ahead of me. What is the number one issue that you will tackle wherever you're going?
The number one issue has to be jobs, has to be raising the income levels. The reason why that is so important is because when folks have their own income, they can actually take care of themselves. Homeowners matter. Renters matter a little less. We have to raise the income level so that people can start to again become homeowners and not just renters. We have to, so that's the top priority is raising the income levels and making certain first you got to give folks jobs. So it has to be an economic pitch.
Oh, okay. Define jobs.
Sure. And that's an incredible question because
and a lot of people think, okay, and I'm not stereotyping, but I'm going to because
sure,
this is our community.
That's absolutely right.
We got one Feng Chu Chinese restaurant. Mm-hmm. They said they're going to bring jobs. Mm-hmm. No African Americans are behind there. You have a soul food restaurant. I don't see brothers back there. I see Mexicans cooking fried chicken,
sure,
wheat biscuits, and candy yams. Mm-hmm. What is going on?
Because black people don't want to work is the tagline, which is
that is incorrect.
That's exactly incorrect. But it's
no. How is
point.
it? No, we're dialoguing here.
Sure.
Show me how am I incorrect here? If
I can.
If number one, if I can't go to culinary school because they cut it. Mm-hmm. So how do I know to cook chicken, greens? A parent is not a parent. A parent is like 5 or 10 years older than their child. So we're all discombobulated here. So you're saying jobs. What kind of jobs are you bringing to my community? So I can say, okay, I'm listening.
Look, we have to have a multi-dimensional economy in Chicago and Illinois. But let's take a step back and just look at where the opportunity exists over the next coming decade. We have an infrastructure deficit. Bridges are falling down. They don't give you much warning. They just fall sometimes. We looked at what happened in Minnesota some years ago. One of the most important pieces to an economy is its transportation infrastructure. And that's what we have to rebuild here in Chicago, Illinois, but all over the country. This country has to make an investment in public assets and not just merely sell them off like Mayor Daley did, like Rahm Emanuel has continued to do. We have to make public investments in our infrastructure so those type of jobs will bring construction jobs. But it's not just jobs either because the supply chain is much greater than that. The opportunities will exist for folks to have businesses, but we have to invest in startups. We have to literally invest directly into folks who are willing to start up their own business, take the chance and going out on their own. But let me add something to that. There also needs to be a massive investment in education in this country. Because if it's not, we're racing ourselves straight to the bottom again, while other countries have, true enough, systematically brought tyranny on many of their people, but they also, places like China also, while at the same time investing more in education now. And we have to keep up in that race. So we have to invest in education. You invest in education jobs, and those will also increase. There will be a lot of jobs added if we make that true and we should. At the state level, we invest more percentage-wise than any other state in the country. So you're talking about my cousins in Mississippi. Well, we like to critique our kinfolk down in Mississippi and Alabama. Yeah, but you know what? Today, they are more progressive. The racist state of Mississippi is more progressive than Illinois. And
But
that's a travesty.
but let me challenge you there.
Sure.
We talk about Dr. King, and one of the, I would say, profound orators we had in our time. When he marched in Marquette Park, he thought he was going to be killed
Mm-hmm.
without knowing there was a contract on his life with the then Mayor Daley's father, and also with them. And just in case a reporter feel MLK, you can YouTube it. It has everything on there, what I'm about to say and express to you. Had a contract on his life, but he had a meeting with them. And he said one thing that stands to this day in Chicago. When he got hit with a brick, he said, and I quote, and I said this to Jedediah Brown regarding leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, this time, I've been to Mississippi, Alabama, Montgomery, all the red states you can imagine. But Chicago, the promised land. What he meant by that? Whites. But behind those closed doors is a different story. Your thoughts on that?
I think that's very as much true as it was when he made the statement as it is today. And the added twist, today is that it's very difficult now to really even discern, like it was then, who's an ally and who's an enemy. Because some of the folks who are actually, in fact, engaging in that same practice that the Dailies practiced with Dr. King from some 50 some years ago, are today, they look just like you and I. They will tell us in our face how much they are sick about the levels of violence in their neighborhoods that their wives live in and their children live in, then go behind closed doors and agree to make decisions that is going to increase that violence. Black politicians, and now focus on black. For my life, I've been represented by black people over at the state level, and not at the mayor's level and not at the governor's level, but my local elected officials were black, supporting measures like that. My grandmother is on a fixed income, but the property tax is going to go up. Many people in our communities who are scraping by, finding whatever type of work that they can find when they can find it, are going to have water bill increases that's going to make them make a decision if they're going to wash their clothes or not. At laundromats are going to close because these water bills are going to be astronomically high. We have to think about the public policies, not just constituent services at the aldermanic level, but also the ordinances that they craft. And the only way regular folks are going to understand that is if we have true political leaders that are deeply, deeply invested in actually providing trainings and educations on a regular basis to make folks understand this. Because folks have lives to lead, but it's incumbent upon political leaders to live this life of making certain that our people are fully prepared so that we all who are affected by the public decisions that are made to make sure that we make the right decisions. Because many folks have supported stuff that's counter to their own interests, not knowing to them, but it sounded great coming from a friendly face. Somebody who that's been told them nothing but great things that they intend to do in the wards and in the districts at the state level and in the congressional districts at the federal level. So we have to make certain that we have independent black independent black political leadership. And we need not mesh words and just say black and brown, because I have friends in the brown community and I have no ill will towards them. It's actually something we should celebrate, of folks taking their own pennies, putting them together, and creating their own independent Mexican and Latino political leadership. But we as African American, as black people in the city, have to be very clear that it is not only the right thing to do, it is the only thing that we can do to protect our interests. Is to actually be very intentional in having independent, strong black political leadership. And that's not an attack against anyone, but it's certainly a defense of us.
We're almost running out of time here. To answer your question, you talk about jobs. Structure. I'm in Austin community. Sometimes I see it in the suburbs. Predominantly black. Not a single black person on these construction sites. You talk about uplift our infrastructure. No, you say uplift our infrastructure.
Well, there's policy answers to what you're talking about. So you know what a PLA is, a project labor agreement. It's one of the big fights that's happening at the state, by the way. Project labor agreements dictates on all job sites the ratios of journeyman to apprentice, and whether it's going to be union job sites or not. Illinois, Chicago has more project labor agreements than than all the other cities and states combined. Construction workers in this city, in this town, do very well if they're union construction workers. Look in the district, Mike Madigan's district, a great number of those individuals over there, men and some women, are union construction workers. If you want a job, move over in his district. You'll have one, because they control all of the project labor agreements, and it's never changed without a hitch. We have to have in our communities very clear with the language. When we say disenfranchised worker, what does that mean? When we say minority worker, what does that mean? We have to be very, very clear. The people that we want working have to live here. We're not talking about on a temporary basis either.
But it goes back to Dorothy Brown. Back in the day when she was alderman. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not Dorothy Brown. Dorothy Tillman. Dorothy Tillman. I'm sorry. Dorothy Tillman. She's in my brain somehow. Dorothy Tillman.
You're talking about Roman Dorothy?
Dorothy Tillman. I mean,
Dorothy.
Dorothy Tillman. There you go. In city council, mm-hmm. She had this project called 7030. Mm-hmm. It failed. And someone asked her, why did it fail? Because it was 70% of the people, if there's a construction site, has to be represented. 30% outside. That keeps the money within. Why it failed. My second question, because of timing, I asked several people on this show over and over again, if we're in an African American, why we don't have a credit union that helps put the money with your response?
You're talking about the Dorothy question or your last question?
Both.
Well, the Dorothy question is an easy one. I'm not well versed on that particular ordinance that Dorothy crafted, so I can't speak to it.
It's called 7030.
Yeah. So I will be going back to research that specific ordinance. What I will say is I suspect that it went against what at the time Mayor Daley had his machine working, where his people would have been out of jobs and my people would have been in the jobs. And I suspect that that's why it failed. But I don't want to be presumptuous in that. But knowing what I know about the city, I suspect that that was the case. In terms of credit unions inside of our communities, I think I was talking to my father about this last night, actually. He said, Dad, there was this, we just watched Hidden Figures. We took my kids to see. My wife and I took our kids to see Hidden Figures, an incredible movie. And I said, Dad, after we came back, I said, the more I learn, the more people I talk to, it's very clear that African American people, your generation, my grandparents' generation, made so many strides in such a short manner of time that the government had, took the position that they had to crush the African American people as best they could to slow down their progress. And I think that is why we don't see credit unions, because the banking rules are skewed so in favor to a handful of people, to a conglomerate of banks and very wealthy business makers, movers and shakers. And that has been, and the rules are crafted in favor of them by Democrats and Republicans alike. So if it's one thing that they've colluded on, if it's two things, I'll talk about two things. It's two things that Democrats and Republicans have colluded on together, irrespective of what people think. They hate each other. They're friends, many of them, across the aisle, BFFs. They've colluded on supporting a few very, very wealthy special interest groups, and they've colluded to stop and set the campaigning rules so that no independent political party could ever come up and challenge them. It's very unfair, but these are reasons why you won't see these type of things inside of the Black community, because these chosen few who the government sets these rules to favor actually work against the interests of Black people, because our people are extremely talented people. And when we got our heads together, there's never been a people that could make so much progress in such a short amount of time as the people that I happen to be a part of, African Americans.
People want to get in contact with you?
I'm a Facebooker. Willie Preston is my Facebook name. That's the way you can reach me.
All right, bro. Thanks a lot. Don't be a stranger to the drive.
Okay.
I'm going to hold you to next month. Okay.
Sure. I'm gonna hold you to it.
Okay. No problem. That's going to do it for us for this special edition of the Drive at 5. Happy MLK, everyone. Thanks to Earl Winfrey.
Happy MLK.
Our executive producer, Earl Winfrey, Rhea Ray Harris, and Wanda. Rhea Ray Harris is up next with Straight No Chaser. I'll see you next week with Doc Walls.